Hello, everyone. Welcome back to second episode number 2 of Executive Table Talk. I'm so excited to be bringing you this new weekly series here live on LinkedIn, where we're talking to executives from literally around the globe about some of the most pressing things that we're dealing with. A lot has changed since the pandemic. And I think hearing from other perspectives and gaining insight is one of the best ways to learn and grow as an executive, especially if you're in a leadership role. So speaking of that, we're going to be talking today about the number one mistake that executives make when they're hiring talent. Now, how am I getting these amazing speakers for our show? Well, I actually run an incredible private community for executives who, for the last 2 years now, we've been coming together, talking about various issues and really figuring out how we can, get that information out to the world. And so these wonderful participants today are executives who have been just crushing it, particularly here on LinkedIn. You may have already seen them, and now I'm lucky enough to have them on our show. So with that in mind, let me bring them all up onto the screen so that you can see them. Hello, everybody. So
Hello.
I have got Carla Biasi. She is a retail, particularly a personal stylist and retail executive background. Lisa Perry, global digital marketing executive. John Shamberi, he comes from the education background. You're going to see more about him in a second. And then Anna Smith, who's a talent architect and also does, strategy, learning strategy. So I'm going to let you all share more about that as we get going. But I want to get into it because you all sent me some pretty cool responses in our private community when I asked you about this. So let's talk about it because, John, I'm going to put you in the hot seat first. I was so intrigued with your comment because you talked about educators right now in this time, right? I think I read somewhere, and I'm sure the stat varies, but they're saying like 75% of schools right now are short-staffed. So you pointed out that they're taking like just anyone, right? Anything to put, that butt in the chair. But you're saying that it's in a district's best interest to really hire candidates that understand their community specifically. So talk to us about that, and how do you deal with that? How do you make sure that you're hiring those right people in such time crunched times where there's such a labor shortage in education?
Indeed. And thanks, JT, for the opportunity to talk. It's an important conversation to have, I think, across industry, but also in education, because as you pointed out, schools are in a tight place. A lot of teachers are leaving the field for other opportunities, and not as many teachers are coming into the profession. So what is indeed happening is when you're lucky to get anyone applying for a job, particularly if they're in a STEM background, a math science background, you're just grabbing at people. But the problem in doing that is, as you were saying, you don't necessarily know if the person is going to be a fit for your culture, or even if they can really demonstrate impact. So I know from my own experiences, the experiences of my peers, haste makes waste, right? Where you might think the person is a good fit because you had a decent conversation, but unless you build in to the hiring practice impact and having candidates demonstrate impact, either past impact that they've had, or if you can, or how you can build in an exercise within the hiring practice or the process where you can see them in action and the impact they could have, whether that's by looking at data and what they would do with that student data, or having them actually teach a demo lesson in front of actual students. That's really the only way you're going to get a sense if that person is both a fit, and B, if they can demonstrate impact.
Oh my gosh. So, and I think about this because the mistake of hiring the wrong teacher, I mean, those are kids, I have kids, and to think about that we could be hiring a lot of people that are really shouldn't be, teaching or just not right for that role. And the impact that has, you talk about impact, is huge for me. So I love your idea around creating some sort of exercise or way to vet them and make sure that they're in sync. It's huge to screen out, right? And I know that the pressure is to, again, put that person in the chair, but the impact of putting the wrong person in the chair to me just seems so much greater, So I loved that piece for you. Now, kind of going along those same lines, because you are sort of in the public sector, nonprofit. It's a little bit different than the private sector. Lisa, you had a really interesting piece here. Your quote that you sent in to me, you talked about looking at the broader organization and the team first before you even start thinking about who to hire. What did you mean by that? And can you give us an example?
Sure. As you and John just said, selecting a new employee is a very critical decision. And time again, we've seen that people who are hired in are either not qualified or not a cultural fit. In fact, almost 30% of employers have said that a single bad hire costs more than $50,000. $50,000. Just think about that.
Yeah.
And traditionally, people hire externally. But with the rise of the global economic uncertainty, looking internally is really beneficial. It's faster, it builds morale, there's a shorter learning curve, and quite honestly, it has a lot of better success rates. And so if you think about this, there's almost 10% of active job seekers look internally first within the organization. So as companies start to fill open positions, think about the organization as you do within internally, I want you to think of four things. First, leverage your underutilized talent to fill those open positions. Second, think about those that are ready to be promoted. And third, be mindful of your talent development strategy. And what I mean by this is identify and develop those employees who have the potential to move into those senior development roles. And last, encourage employees to apply and not just post it on the internet, right? You want to post it out on employee newsletters, send it out in a company-wide email. Be mindful of how you're sending that out there. And quite honestly, if you are looking across your talent pool and can't find at least one potential candidate to fill that open position, you've got a bigger problem on your hands.
I love that you're saying this because I've heard employers say to me recently, but I need that person in that role. I can't possibly let them apply to another role internally. And all they're doing is pushing them out the door. And this is where the churn's coming from. And I love that you said, gosh, they're already a cultural fit. You already hired them. So you certainly can upskill them. I mean, really, really important for us to think about. But I can see where people are getting myopic and going, no, I need new blood. I've got to bring new people in there, but not thinking about this strategically. Absolutely loved that concept. So continuing along that theme, Carla, I want to talk about this idea of personality and attitude and disposition. So you're a shopping and styling professional. You've been in retail. You've been an executive in these companies. You know that personality and aptitude and attitude can oftentimes play a way bigger role than actual experience. So talk to us a little bit about that.
JT, we have to remember when we're going through that hiring process that we're hiring a human. We start with looking at resumes or going through the ATS, the applicant tracking system. So that's a wonderful start, especially when you're getting dozens, if not hundreds of applications. But then we really have to look at that individual as we're going through that interview process. Listen, look at their body language, because we, as people, we're made up of emotion, personality. We have an emotional intelligence. And those are things that when we bring it to that team in the workplace, it makes a huge impact. So, like Lisa was saying, I mean, you have to look bigger than just what's on paper. We have to make sure that person not only can do the job, but will fit in that environment, in the corporate culture and with the team. And I would recommend for any hiring manager that is not doing this, you should take those applicants that you're very serious about. You need to introduce them to your team, because this is who they will work with side by side, 40 plus hours a week. And it needs to work because we need the entire team to be successful. And when the team is successful, the company in turn is successful. So I really want to encourage hiring managers, please look at that person, talk to them, get to know them, and bring them into your team.
I love that you said this, because you opened with the word human, which I think we need to be saying more. You're hiring human beings. You're not just trying to, check a box or fill a slot. And the fact that we're trying to rush through the process and not giving them a chance to meet their peers to make sure it's a fit, for them to understand how the culture operates. So they don't just get dropped in there and then, maybe not gel or make a mistake and can't come back from it, right? I mean, it's so important that you're giving them that shot. I love that you talked about that, because again, Lisa's point, the cost the sheer cost of making these bad mistakes right now, these hiring mistakes right now is absolutely huge. It's astronomical. And companies just aren't thinking about that. So let's lead into that because Anna, I want to make sure that we bring up your very interesting quote around bias. If you're human, you're biased, right? Carla said human, and you said if you're human, you're biased, and how all of us as hiring managers, as executives, have natural bias about this. So talk about that for us because, you know, your background as a talent architect, you see a lot of this. And how should executives be thinking to make sure that bias isn't impacting their ability to hire correctly?
Yeah, thank you, JT. And yes, definitely, we are only human, right? Both whether you're hiring or you're about to get hired or you're in that process. And we tend to forget that our biases are things that our brains have created as shortcuts to get us places, and they are survival mechanisms. By the same token, in the hiring process, they may be completely limiting. So think about, for example, the famous halo effect or horn effect, which would be the opposite of it. So halo effect, liking someone's attire, right? And saying, oh my goodness, this person is really sharp. And that builds your whole interpretation of the interview. And I'm, of course, oversimplifying for effect, but it is really not oversimplifying for effect. And we know that. The opposite is true as well on somebody who might have arrived late to an appointment, and that thing, even though the person might have been in an accident and made it to the appointment for the interview, by the same token, we are automatically qualifying and categorizing that particular individual and disqualifying them, even they may have done a stellar interview as part of their process. So there's many of them, and I think awareness, and just like Carla mentioned, the emotional intelligence, which includes, of course, self-awareness, is key. I would potentially recommend 4 things that are fundamental. The preparation, right? What capabilities and characteristics you're looking in that particular individual, and you have to be aligned from a stakeholder perspective. Everybody that is going to be part of the interviewing process and be either the manager or key stakeholders of that particular role. Then as you select that particular individual, what is the process going to be? Is it going to be a panel? Is it going to be, 3 people are going to make the decision? Is it going to be a consensus, etc.? Having that, in advance, then making the offer. That would be the third piece that I would think is critical as well. What is the offer for this particular individual going to mean for the rest of the team? Are we going to super hire someone on a band that on a salary band that is going to automatically throw everybody off, etc.? And we've all seen and heard about these things. So that is another big one. And the last one that I don't want to ever forget is once you have this fantastic and phenomenal talent in, make sure that you bring them on board in the best possible way and bring them right, make them feel at home, prepare interviews with specific stakeholders, make sure that there's alignment of what's expected of them, and have an opportunity to maybe have a buddy that can accompany them for the first 30, 60, 90 days, etc. And all of these different things. So all of these, I think, can help balance the biases besides the awareness to make sure that your process, your selection process is really going to bring it home, in addition to all the great things that my colleagues have mentioned. Absolutely.
I love it. I mean, so I'm really hearing themes across the board here, folks, which is plan. Think about what you're hiring for, think about the hiring process, make sure it's built in a way that's going to select the right talent, make sure once you select the right talent, they're going to stay, just so many things that go into this. And I want to just give a shout out to Peter Torrey, because Peter posted a comment here. This is refreshing to hear. I'm an executive leader who hired many candidates by character, teachable attitude, and can adapt to change. Thank you, Peter, for talking about that, whether it's the internal person that you want to bring up or that external person that you're making sure is a fit. That's what we're talking about here. Really investing some thought and time and energy into making right hires in a time where everybody's just kind of rushing, it feels like, to just get somebody in the chair. which I love. So now we're going to take questions from the audience. If you have a question, it really helps if you put the word question in all caps first. I can pick it out of all this great discussion. I see some fascinating discussion going on here. I want to give a shout out and ask the question from Stan Hammond. Stan is saying, does a company need to publish career tracks to enhance this process? So I think what he means by that is, should you be telling people what will be the journey? If you come in at this level, you can go to this level. Love to get your sense on that. I'm seeing a couple nods here. So let's go back to you, John. What do you think?
Definitely. I mean, even though you're hiring somebody for one position, I think it goes back to what you were saying, JT, where you don't want people walking out the door. You want them to see your company, your organization, whether for profit or nonprofit, as a home, right? Especially also when now people are changing jobs, even when it is a good initial fit, every year or two. So I think Stan is exactly right. Showing people what opportunities there are in addition to what they're currently doing can really start making them feel like they have found a professional home.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Lisa, jump in there. I see you nodding too.
I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with staff who are frustrated beyond belief because either they've been put into a role that they're like, I don't know if this is right for me, and or they're just like, where am I going? Where can I go? What's the opportunity? And so I've had to lay it out because it's not there and say, here are the opportunities within this in this department. And if this isn't right, let's figure out within the organization. If the organization just takes the time to lay out career tracks within departments and cross-functionally where people can go, it as John said, it creates a home for the organization to say, we are going to take care of you. We want to help you within your career to advance here. We care about you. But it's not done in a lot of organizations that I've been in. So
no, great feedback, great feedback. Carla and Anna, I want to ask you a question based on a comment here by Wallace. Wallace said, I found that if you speak with an applicant for more than 1 hour, you will see if they are not a great fit. Fit is more important to me, as well as the ability to learn and grow as a person. Now, both of you talked about that, the idea of really getting to know that person. Is an hour reasonable? I'm going to give you a crazy stat. I was told that executives, particularly CEOs, in 13 minutes of meeting a candidate, they've made up their mind as to whether or not they're going to hire them. 13 minutes, they've made up their mind. So talk about bias, right, Anna? I mean, for somebody to feel they have to make a decision that quickly about a candidate. What are your thoughts on that, Carla? Is it reasonable to expect that you should spend that hour, even if you're not getting that right vibe out of the gate, but really to take that much time to dig in? Thoughts on that?
I think it's very important to take each applicant separately. Instead of us saying, oh, it's going to be an hour, I need to spend 30 minutes, I'm going to block off this time, this is necessary. It may not be. I can honestly understand, JT, that statistic very well. But it could be within 13 minutes. It could be within 3 minutes that you can understand if that person will be a good fit. So instead of it being such a time crunch, I would probably do a little homework first, get online, look at that applicant, see what their social media is about, because that can help tremendously to cut down on that hour time. Get to know them a little bit. But I think very easily it can happen, before 13 minutes, or sometimes you need the whole hour. So just keep an open mind that it's about the person and not the time schedule.
Great point. Anna, what are your thoughts on that?
This is such a relevant question from the perspective that you may find this person not fit for the role, and they may be, the candidate, yet you cannot see it because of your biases or what have you. So Wallace, your question is really significant from this perspective. If you have a process in place from the get-go that allows for candidates that, let's say that out of 7 areas, this particular individual fits in 6 areas, and you decide on coming and defining the finalists through a panel discussion, not a conformity bias or something different. You may be surprised on what you hear from other people, because evidently what you can see in 1 hour in one person may not, and most probably is not true. Most probably is not true. That's why my big recommendation in these types of topics is always have an opportunity to discuss and calibrate and quantify, what the place is for each one of the candidates and why.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Great one. So Gary's kind of asking a question, but seriously making a point. Most companies don't have onboarding processes. I think all of you talked about, to some degree, you want to get a candidate in there and take care of them. And boy, what a waste, right? To spend all that time and money to hire someone only to drop them in there and lose them because their first 90 days on the job didn't help them acclimate and get to a place of comfort that they thought that they, could do well in that company. So we see a lot of turnover, or quite frankly, they make a critical mistake because they weren't coached. I'd like to go around to each one of you and talk a little bit about what are you seeing as the onboarding trends in your particular industry? So let's start with education first, John. Is there onboarding, or do they just get thrown into the teaching?
I think it depends, JT, on where the person is teaching. So if it's a school system that has assigned mentors, teacher leaders, then a teacher could get a lot of support coming on board. But if the district is not well financed or hasn't set those roles up, then it really is incumbent upon the leader of the school to figure out how they can still support and mentor those teachers. And it really comes down to getting out of the office and mingling with your educators. I do a lot of work with school leaders around leaving the paperwork for the early morning and the late afternoon, and during the actual instruction during the day, how are they getting out and actually giving feedback to educators? Not in a formal evaluative way, but just really being in there in the classrooms with the teachers, with the students, because those are the moments that are really going to potentially change practice. So I would even say from a corporate or a for-profit, view of that, my question would be, how could for-profit companies also ensure that their CEOs, their managers are actually getting out there in the trenches? So if you don't have those formal mentorship processes in place, how can you at least informally be providing coaching and support along the way?
I love it. Now, before I jump to Lisa, I just want to give a plug. Episode 1 of Executive Table Talk last week was about leading in a hybrid workplace. So going off of what John just said about getting out there and connecting, please go back and watch our earlier episode. It was a great episode on how to deal with that for sure. Lisa, global marketing sales space, what are you seeing for onboarding? Oh, we can't hear you, girl.
Because I'm on mute. That was
there we go.
nice.
That's good. That's the beauty of live. That's the beauty of live.
It's fire, jump in, get up to speed, make results quickly, I think is the trend. And there's definitely opportunity to better onboarding. I think some organizations do it better than others, but on the whole, being realistic about understanding the company, what are the expectations, setting out a realistic 30, 60, 90, even 120-day plan, making sure not just from an HR perspective, what does that onboarding look like, but what does it look like for each department and cross-functionally, how does that work? So there's clearly opportunities across companies and how they can get better in the sales and marketing arena, and then holistically throughout the company. From my perspective, in this arena, huge upside potential.
For sure. Carla, retail styling space, what are you seeing?
I tell you, JT, it's all DIY. Nowadays you are expected to do so much onboarding ahead of time. And we've talked about that, how you might want to just onboard yourself or know how to do it when you're in that interview process, right? So you will be asked to complete, forms, submit information. you may be asked to look at the software program that you will be using and make sure you have an understanding of it before you even have day one on the job. So as a hiring manager, it's somewhat of a double-edged sword. If you have this new hire and they're not completing that onboarding process, maybe to your satisfaction, it could be a red flag. However, this could be somebody that's finishing out a notice in their current position and they need to get things done correctly before they leave, which I find admirable, the right thing to do. So therefore, they may struggle with that onboarding process. But I'm telling you, the trend is definitely DIY. So get ready if you're out there looking for a job, and just know that you probably will be asked to do a lot of the onboarding on your own time.
Oh my goodness. All this work to hire and then not keeping them. Anna, we're going to round out with you. What are you seeing?
But very specifically, and most usually, the larger organizations have sharpened their skills around here, and they have identified this as a huge opportunity, especially thinking that in the first 60 days, we decide if we want to stay in this organization or not, independently of how long we stay. It's very, very quick when we decide, in general, it doesn't really matter what field you're in. But I do see that even if you're not in one organization where onboarding is is part of the process, is to Gary's question, this is where managers and leaders have a huge opportunity. And I think I see it as a low-hanging fruit to really prepare something for their own teams where they can really bring them on board. And it's going to really pay off. That effort and that instance is going to really pay off. So that would probably be my recommendation or perspective on that.
I love it. I love it. Great job, everyone. I can't believe 30 minutes goes way too fast with you all. Folks, today we've been talking with some amazing executives across all industries about the mistakes that executives make when hiring talent. I heard a lot of great themes today, some great takeaways. What I'd like to do is round it out and just go across and have each of you tell folks where they can connect with you specifically on LinkedIn. So if you could give them your LinkedIn handle, that would be great. And also just summarize for them your background. It would be wonderful. We jumped right into it today. I feel like you've all earned the opportunity to tell these folks what you're all about. So Carla, we'll start with you.
You can find me on LinkedIn, just under Carla Biazzi. I'm also on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram under CB Style. So come visit me. And I have been unofficially styling for decades. So a couple of years ago, I decided to leave corporate America and my role in the financial industry to finally do not only what I love, but what I believe I was meant to do.
Love it. Love it. Lisa, what about you? Oh, she's on mute again. Can we get you? That's okay.
Sorry about that. I'm just, I'm good at muting myself, apparently. You can find me at LinkedIn on Lisa Perry Marketing. And I'm a brand marketing executive that has worked for Fortune 100 companies to emerging growth startups. And very excited to work with people across the consumer packaged goods to the technology and digital space. So thanks, JT. Appreciate it.
Thank you. John, what about you? Where can we find you on LinkedIn?
I am on LinkedIn under my name, John Shimberry. I also am on TikTok. I do also write with JT on Work It Daily, so you can see some of my articles there as well. And in terms of my background, started as a teacher, became a school administrator, then a district administrator, and now I'm a consultant and a coach. And I go out and support teachers and school leaders and really try to help folks, because we're all in that same boat rowing together, to help our students achieve and grow.
Love it. Love it. And Anna, how about you?
Also on LinkedIn, Anna Smith, talent strategist. I basically work in the intersection of business, technology, and people. So the vast work of my experience and my background has been in Global 50 organizations. I'm currently working as an executive coach and doing project work with fantastic profit and nonprofit organizations. So thank you, JT, for the opportunity.
Yeah, this is a great group, folks. And by the way, they are all contributing authors over at workitdaily.com. You can find their work there. Please go find them and follow them today on LinkedIn. They really have incredible insights. And all 4 of these individuals are truly serving their network here on LinkedIn. They're sharing valuable insights, ideas, content in their space. So worth the follow. So check it out. I cannot thank you all enough. Carla, Lisa, John, Anna, you're the best. Episode 2 of Executive Table Talk is in the books. Until next time, folks, remember, if you want to win, you got to work it daily, okay? Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.